Welcome to another episode of the Mastermind Mixers. Thank you for joining us. I'm not sure this one will take a full hour, but I guess we'll see. I'm going to play the slideshow. And I'm assuming that everybody who signed up saw that we're going to be talking about donor advised funds today.
Yep.
So we're going to be talking about how to market donor advised funds, which has been a question that I've gotten over the years many times. It's easier than you think. And in fact, let me go over the regular housekeeping items and stuff. But our agenda today will be that I'll go through the quick housekeeping items. We might break into groups, but if it stays this small and more people don't roll in, I think I'll just keep us together, where I'd like to share some stories and hear about either successes or challenges that you've had with regard to raising money from people who have donor advised funds. Then I'll get into some DAF marketing basics. I'll give you my perspective on it. And then we're going to regroup. And if we were in, this is out of order, but I'll talk to you about how to actually market these things. I'll talk to you about a new Market Smart effort that we've got. So especially if you're a Market Smart customer and not only enrolled in the course, you'll be getting a sneak peek of something that we'll be rolling out. And then we'll take questions and wrap it up and see if that lasts an hour. So everybody ready? Give me a thumbs up or wave or something. All right. Yes. Thank you. All right. So the housekeeping items is just remember that anybody involved with your cause can attend these events. That includes colleagues, your friends, your boss, your staff, your board members, even if you want. And the more the merrier. And if you keep finding value out of it and you think they will, then we'd love to have them. This is available. These Mastermind Mixers are monthly. They're available to both Market Smart customers, subscribers of our system, and e-course students who are taking the Dr. James online e-course. Feel free to share the meeting link. Yeah, I already said that. Even board members. And at the very end, there will be a survey when you leave. And if you'll provide feedback, we'd appreciate it. You don't have to, but I'm trying to make these better every time, so you get a lot of value out of it. The last thing is that if you are taking the e-course online with the Dr. James e-course, it is, I'm always told by my staff to remind people it's an annual subscription. It's a low subscription. You can give it to your entire staff. I remember that early on, the American Heart Association was like, what, this one low price and we could give it to everybody? And I said, yes, everybody. It's not a big money maker. We're just trying to help get Dr. James's content out to everybody, but it is an annual subscription. All right. Oh, and the last housekeeping item is that if you know anybody, friends, colleagues, other board members that you believe might benefit from our system at Market Smart or the e-course, please let them know. Just send them to our website at imarketsmart.com. I guess we should have written that URL there. All right. So before I actually talk about how to market these things, let's reflect a little bit on Dr. James's e-course. So in the e-course, Dr. Russell James talks about heroes and the hero's journey. And it's really masterful what he did. And it really changed my perspective on how fundraising should be done. And so many of you have told me that when you've read or taken the course or read his books, you're like, yeah, this is exactly how I do it. Or if you're new to the business, then you're like, oh, I didn't realize that that's how it should be done. But what he's taught is that your role is really one of a guide and counselor, a facilitator. And the number one thing that your you should be focused on is helping the donor to advance their hero story. And he says it really succinctly in the book, and he repeats it, and he says, even if you take one thing out of his course or the books or anything, he says just one thing is always remember that your role, your job is to help them advance in their own hero story. So everybody wants to be a hero in their own life story. And what he further recommends is that as their guide and sage and counselor, you have a responsibility, and you also have the unique power to be able to provide these supporters and donors with weapons, if you will, tools, instruments that can help them advance and get the value that they desire to find meaning in their lives. Now, for some of these folks, especially if some of you are in planned giving, these can be highly technical tools, and it could get really complicated. For others, these tools can be simple resources or checklists, or even offers of value, meaning making connections. Like if you work for a symphony orchestra, maybe the tool, so to speak, is a opportunity for somebody to meet the conductor or someone who plays their favorite instrument, or getting a little backstage VIP access, so to speak. These are all different kinds of tools. At MarketSmart, we call them offers also. And a tool in specific that we're talking about today is the donor advised fund, which we all are familiar with by now and know that it's the fastest growing tool out there. It provides a tremendous amount of value to people who are becoming more and more distrusting of charities and charitable giving. So what they do is they instead of creating their own private family foundation, it's a lot easier to sort of take a pause and park their money in a donor advised fund so that they can be deliberate and intentional and make sure that they don't end up with donor remorse. They want to make sure that they get the value through giving that they desire. So the donor advised fund is a tool. It's a tool that either you can offer if your organization or institution actually has one, which more and more, especially larger ones, are creating their own and having the rules that go along with them, so to speak. But there are, I would say most organizations are not going to create their own. And that the donors, the supporters are going to park their money there. And then a lot of times they forget about it. And they'll even make the regular kind of annual fund type donation using the donate now button, or it's kind of like Pavlov's dog. If anyone remembers psychology, it's like they get the letter in the mail and they've been sending a check for 25 years. So then they just send the check, but the check is always going to be less, generally speaking, than the money that would be granted from a donor advised fund, because there's more money in the donor advised fund, and in most cases. And also the research has shown, I think it was from Fidelity or the National Philanthropic Trust, that the size of the gifts from donor advised funds is pretty big. I mean, and you all may know your averages better than them, but they could be $7,000 on average, which is a lot more than a regular donation. So before getting into how to market these things, and I see, and maybe Trisha, you can help me letting me know, there really aren't, I'm going to stick with just this group. We're not going to go into rooms today. Because I think we have enough or few enough people that we can just enter into a dialogue here, is I'm curious if you feel comfortable sharing, what are some of the successes that you've had with either talking to people about donor advised fund giving and making sure that if they have one that they give that way, or the challenges that you've experienced. And you could go either way, which maybe we'll just start off with challenges. Like, has anyone felt frustration that they can't see, they know people have this money and it's stashed away, but they don't know how to help people give, like how to use that tool or how to remind them about it? It's hard for me to, let me see if I could see everybody and just go for it.
Hey, Greg, this is Laura Waller, Salvation Army down in Florida. How are you?
Hi, it's good to see you as always.
Yeah. So, hey, it looks almost as nice there as it does here, you know, today. No snow, but at the Salvation Army in the Southern Territory, we have our own donor advised fund. And one of the challenges is that, but just with donor advised funds in general, I'm in planned giving, and I know that if there's a donor advised fund donor out there granting to our local cores that you know, out of their donor advised fund, hey, I want to have a planned giving conversation with those people, because that usually indicates that they have other wealth that we can draw on for a bequest. And we could become, you know, we could receive grants if they have named a successor advisor. We want to build relationships in those generations. And also, if they don't have a successor advisor and they're just going to donate it out, you know, we want to have those conversations or grant it out in after death. But the way that things come in, people just put the check in. And they don't, in our database, they're not, the people doing the task don't recognize what it is. In fact, we get lots of checks from this guy named Charles Schwab, and he has a charitable fund.
You're right. Okay, so you're saying there's if I hear you right, you're saying there's a data issue. Emma puts a little crying sign. Yeah, thanks, Emma. So there's sort of that, is that the biggest issue, is the data issue and being able to know who exactly has these?
Yeah, we don't even know who has them.
So, but when they come in, most of them are anonymous. Is that what you're finding?
Well, we don't even, all it looks like to the so it comes into like the local core, the local office that it's benefiting, and there's just a clerk who's putting stuff in. There's no like anybody looking at the check itself to see, okay, is there a donor's name associated with it? Is there a name associated with this? And where we look at, nobody's doing that kind of research. They just put the check in and they communicate it nowhere. And there's no way to discreetly say, or there's no discrete coding saying this was from a donor advised fund, again, because they don't even know what it is. So that's my challenge. It's an internal thing.
Yeah, but I think this resonates. I'm seeing one note in the chat from Emma. Thank you. And I've heard this before, but I think there's a cascading ripple effect of issues that if you don't capture that data, then you can't steward that donor. You can't try to arrange a meeting to get to know them and thank them. You can't inquire to understand if they would consider a beneficiary designation, or are they just going to let somebody else run it after, so to speak, after they're gone? We don't know much of anything. It's a great gift. But what is anybody else feeling this way? I see some heads nodding, and if you'll join in, it would be helpful.
Hi, this is Karina. I'm in the leadership giving program, so we work closely with the state giving. What I'm about to do, because we have Market Smart, and there are survey questions that ask you something like, are you likely to give, I don't remember the exact questions, a donor advised fund.
Mhm.
So we have started to import this type of data into our CRM. So I have like requested some data. And so my next step is to do some discovery calls. So I'm just trying to figure out like ways to ask questions without coming right out yet from the initial call to say, hey, I see you flagged certain things. Can you tell me more? And I just scanned some of the donors, and it looks like some of them are monthly donors. So I find that interesting. Yeah, so this is where I am. So that's why this topic is really interesting.
Karina, that's actually, oh, sorry, someone was, oh, no. It's fascinating that you said that some of them are monthly donors, because this, they can make their DAF gift monthly, and it'll probably be larger, but also it's really can become their new annual fund gift. I mean, rather than making their traditional by check or credit card annual fund gift, I mean, they've already moved the money in there. And it's usually a larger amount. I mean, the minimums are usually about $5,000, some a little less. Yeah, anyone had any successes with actually landing a meeting or getting someone on the phone and being able to talk and having it lead to something terrific for both?
Well, I've just found that when we don't have the problem about the data being recorded the way Laura has described, and I'm surprised that there's not, you're such a large organization. I would have thought that there'd be something in place to communicate to all of the whatever you call areas, so that the data entry folks essentially, or gift processing folks. But
Yes.
what I've found it where I've seen it work is, of course, they're not binding. We don't call them binding agreements, but it's led to folks establishing endowed funds, and often a multi-year pledge commitment. And I'd say a lot of the times, the donors who really express interest in that have DAFs, and that seems to be a vehicle that motivates them to use the DAF. Because I do have a challenge, and maybe other folks do too, of people who are using their DAF the way they would, they do know they're DAF. They don't completely forget about it, but that's how it's like checkbook philanthropy for them. I wish my average gift was $7,000 from a DAF, but most of them are, they're probably $1,000, $2,000. And so the challenge is really getting them, either obviously the big picture gifts, or at least on an annual basis, saying, hey, yeah, you thought about increasing the size, and of course we don't know what's in the DAF, but obviously in general, the market's been doing well. So that's my 2 cents.
And Michelle, I see your hands up there.
Yeah. So I'm Michelle Kresge. I'm in Atlanta with Giving Kitchen. I'm the director of donor relations here. We are a nonprofit that helps food service workers in crisis. And I just wanted to share a recent success story we had with a donor advised fund. It was, I guess, a little bit random in that we had received this gift for $15,000, and when it was entered into our system, it was entered separately and not actually connected to the individual donor. And then we were just doing some data cleanup and some research and saw that this gift was there, that this woman had also given, a $50 gift. And we realized that was the same woman. And so, well, we realized it because I emailed her and asked her. She had somewhat of a common name too. So it wasn't like we could definitely pinpoint it. So I had sent her an email and just wanted to confirm that was her donor advised fund. And she said, yes. And so we actually went and had coffee. And this is what I think is really interesting, is that she had told me she is with her parents, and they own a business, and that this business, that her parents are both very humble folks, didn't want to put their money into a family foundation because they didn't want it all to be public, and wanted to put it into a donor advised fund so that they could give more anonymously. And she said she's encouraging them to still consider the family foundation, but that's where they were now, because they did want to start giving their money away, but they didn't want to put it into any kind of public entity. And so we had just a really great conversation, and it was interesting to hear that perspective, like a foundation versus the DAF. And so, that's that's why also I felt like this conversation us having today is pretty relevant and interesting, just to some of the work that we're doing internally, is trying to clean up our data, and knowing that there's more and more donor advised funds coming out there, and while they're great, they also can be deeply complicated.
The only thing that has me confused is oftentimes when, the other thing is, there's like a cover letter often with DAF gifts telling us, you may wish to acknowledge, so-and-so, but maybe not all of them do that. So.
Yeah.
Hi there, I'm Deidre Arrow. I'm with the PETA Foundation, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. And just kind of speaking to some internal challenges I found is that, we kind of passively market for DAFs, a buck slip in a mailing or having information on our website, but trying to get DAF information on like an online donation form or on a reply device has been a bit more challenging. I think people are concerned about the amount of availability real estate on those forms, but also concern about taking someone out of the moment, when they're geared to give, and saying, oh, but now go over here and give through your DAF, or check this box and let us know that you're going to give through your DAF. And so I've had some internal challenges trying to promote DAFs more proactively. And then as far as success stories, we did do a DAF and stock gift match at the end of last year, where we had a donor put up a gift, and then any DAF or stock gifts would go towards that match. So that was pretty anecdotally, that seemed to bring in more DAF gifts. And that was promoted more by the officers and like email signatures promoting it, but nothing too active in terms of promoting that, but it was still pretty successful. So.
Excellent. Okay, so I'm going to move into the next step of portion of today's agenda is we'll talk about marketing these things. And I know a bunch of you are Market Smart customers. You too, Deidre. So we'll talk about, because there's gold in them hills. It's funny, I'm in West Virginia. I don't know if there's gold here. There's coal. I think there's coal here. So, all right, let me move this out of the way. So the first thing about marketing, if any of you have read my book or heard me talk about this stuff before, the thing about marketing, especially
good, thanks. You
in fundraising, is that data is 80 to 90% of your challenge. If you have amazing data, if you have a good list, if you have, in fact, let me be more pointed, if you have a list of people who said that they have a donor advised fund, and especially they said that they would consider giving to your organization from it, or they already have, that's a good list. And again, 80 to 90% of the success of any marketing effort is going to be dependent on the data. Okay, so what you want to know is who has a DAF and are they likely to consider giving? Now, the way we phrase these for Market Smart customers, you've probably seen it in the dashboard, that we collect that information for you, but then it has been traditionally up to you to reach out to folks. And as you may have heard, if you've attended some of my webinars about how to make outreaches, we always say never begin the conversation by asking about someone's giving or their money. Always begin, in most cases, by talking to them about their why and about them and their life story, their journey, their history, why they care, and so forth. Bringing up giving at the beginning of the conversation actually creates friction. And it's important for this kind of level of giving that you always start with the story. People, then people center themselves, they can reminisce, and it just, according to everybody, but also especially Dr. James's research, when in doubt, always ask about their why. Begin with their why. Okay, so if you have their data, it makes marketing to generate more donor advised fund gifts that much easier. If you don't have good data, then you really have to get it. So if there are internal challenges, well, I would say that if you have the Market Smart system, you probably don't have to worry about those internal challenges as much, because people will tell us, and you'll see it in the dashboard. You still would want to try and work with the administration, the operation, to make it understood how important it is that when these checks come in, that if it has information about the donor, that you get that data. So, and this is recorded today. So if it helps, you could use this recording and send it to the administrator that's not getting off their tail, and making sure that that happens. Okay, so what's next? The rest of the equation, if you will, for generating these DAF gifts is that you've got to have a really good offer. Which I put in with a slash there, is, in other words, you've got to deliver some sort of value to the donor. To a degree, if your messages are timely, like if we had a crystal ball and we knew that on May 10th, they were going to make a decision about whether to go forward and make a grant from their DAF, if we knew that, then of course we would send an email or give them a call or a reminder on that day. But we're not going to know that specifically in just about every case. So timing is hard to hit on, but if you can be the gentle, polite yet persistent reminder and friend that they want, and it's done in the right way, you can send messages over time that will help them remember that this is something that they wanted to do. The one thing I want to bring to the point is when it comes to marketing, it's data is most of it. The value and the timing, or the offer and the timing are pretty much the rest. And then you're left with creative. So that's like, what colors do you use, or how things are designed and laid out, and how witty your marketing is, and such. And I just want to tell you that matters very, very little. It's not going to affect, like if you have a bad list, it's not going to matter how witty your creative is. If you're mailing low dollar annual fund donors who do not have donor advised funds, it doesn't matter how great your marketing is. You can't get donor advised fund gifts from those people. So I'm going to downplay creative when it comes to marketing this, and I'm going to sort of prop up the use of reminders, practical ideas, because these people, by design of using a donor advised fund, they're showing that they want to be practical and intentional, deliberate. And then there's the value that all of these supporters generally share, which is that they want to be the hero in their own life story. So they want to make change. They want to advocate. They want to help others, and they all there's a whole host of reasons behind all that entwines with their life story. And you've heard those stories, I'm sure, over time. So when you focus mostly on the data and then you provide value so that you hope with reminders and practical ideas and value of heroism, you hit them at the right time, or at least stay politely ever present and somewhat ubiquitous. The results and the positive outcomes will come. They're inevitable. It just works. That's especially because you have the right list. So real quick, I'm going to give a reminder of what our system does. Sorry if this is a little different than most mixers in that it's a little, it'll sound like a sales pitch if you're not a customer yet. But we start with the survey. That's your tech-enabled donor discovery at scale. And through the survey, people will tell us, and they do, especially, oh, I forgot who, they'll tell us whether or not they have a donor advised fund or a family foundation or anything like that, and where they are in the consideration continuum for giving. So that'll automate your regular cultivation emails that Market Smart supplies, and that drives people to the VIP zone, if you will, for engagement. And then they essentially move themselves forward over time, and you see that in your dashboard. Especially, we'll prioritize the people who are the hottest and the hottest leads and the highest score based on our algorithm, and which is essentially based on what they said and where they clicked, so that you can make outreach to talk to them because they're heavily engaged and you know enough about them to have pre-qualified them for outreach. Or they'll set an appointment right on your calendar, which is even better. All right, so this is a high-level view of how it works. Here's your organization and your website, your social media and stuff. You've got your survey system, and then these emails. The virtual gift officer will start engaging with folks, so you don't have to until they're outreach ready. That helps people go to the VIP microsite, get some content, shows up in the dashboard. But then there's these engagement efforts. Most of you probably have one, maybe two or three. And those are the extra efforts. So all this provides you with the actionable intelligence that you need from their verbatims and their tracked online engagement. I like to call it digital body language, so that you pre-qualify people for outreach. So this helps you zero in on people and then cultivate the ones that are not ready. And it also helps migrate those mid-level donors. Okay, so that's what we do. And the key to the success beyond the data for this kind of campaign is the reminders. But people, it's especially important that folks opt in to the emails, which they do, of course, in the survey. It depends. It's generally between 50 to 80%. I like to say it's about 75% on average. Although if they've been hounded upon by other departments, mostly just crass solicitations, then they're less likely to opt in for more, unfortunately. Okay, so out of this system, what we're talking about is whether you do this on your own or you use us, you really need an extra page on your site, on your website, that is a little bit more robust than just saying give from your DAF or call us if you need help. You know, what you need is this. I'll show you what we recommend. And of course, this is an extra effort that you can subscribe to here. It's a new one. So we're in beta and we're looking for people to try it out. But what you want is an extra web page that can be developed either standard, meaning just for people who have their own DAFs, or if your organization has their own DAF, then you would get a different version of this kind of effort page. That way you can accept both the ones for your organization because you have a DAF for your donors, or or they have their own DAF. I hope that makes sense. And then the key to it is the reminders, right? So once they have told us that they have a donor advised fund, then the key is to give them emails over time that help them rethink about the fact that they have this and can give wisely, or they can be the hero in their own story because they can maximize their impact, for instance. So it's usually about whether we're going to kind of tweak their hero story and make them feel like they're finding meaning in life through giving, and reminding them that they have this money stashed away and why not consider giving. Or it's about helping them think about the clever ways that they can use their donor advised fund, for instance. In fact, there's one idea is that like they can teach their family about philanthropy using this, their grandchildren, for instance. You know, that's just one idea. So that really is my basics on how to market these things. I guess I'm pounding it pretty hard to say you've really got to have the data. I hope that's clear to everybody that that's the most important part. I see that there's a comment here. What about partnering with community foundations? Is anyone doing that? Yeah, well, they're oftentimes the storers of the donor advised funds, right? So I'm not sure about that's not my area of expertise in how to partner with those. But if you're a local charity, I would figure that locally that might be a good way to go. I don't know if anybody has had any success with partnering with their community foundation. No, yes, maybe, kind of, sort of. So then all right, good idea, Laura, good try, but maybe not. I don't know. That's not my, but does anybody have thoughts about reminders? Like, does anybody actually send reminders to people? Has anyone given you permission to remind them about something, like after meeting them and over time? Like, anybody got a story of that where people have thanked them for actually I heard someone tell me a story that he was profusely thanked for reminding someone for over years of time, and just being that gentle, politely persistent person. And then when the person finally gave, they said, "Thank you for doing that." Has anyone ever had that? I see maybe a head nodding. Anybody got a story on that? Not really.
I do, but it's not necessarily directly related to the donor advised fund, but to your point, it's the same strategy, just in a slightly different package. And it's the problem with like our website right now, I feel, for promoting our own donor advised fund in the first place, is that it's all about the how, and it looks nice, but it's like the donor doesn't even need us because of the website. And so we're never going to know. They almost don't need us. They can almost set it up themselves because they've got all the instructions and all the how, and it's because our provider, that's what they're all about the transaction. They're not about the, helping us steward our donors and get engaged with them. So that's a challenge. That's another challenge.
Yeah, I appreciate what you were saying there, Laura, because we always say at Market Smart, the why has to come before the how. And we talked about this last time. I think it was Steve actually pointed out, or it was very, Steve, maybe it wasn't you, but someone was on the call and you were like, I think you need to do the why before the how in this.
Yeah.
Was that you? Yeah.
Well, and then also just going through Dr. James's books and everything, it occurred to me that it's even beyond the why, like Simon Sinek, start with why. I think when you're talking about hero story, and Dr. James talks about identity and shifting that identity, creating a new identity, and that whole journey, I would say it's, start with who, even. Because that's where you're getting the story, and that's where you're identifying the identity, because a lot of times even the why can lead to your, that blog post that came out today, or at least I saw the email today about, the transactional versus, really building that relationship. I think if you're too much on a why, especially in plan giving, because you're right, we have so much we have so many technical things. I can use a CLT with a donor advised fund. If they're not quite sure where they want those funds to go or whatever on their CLT right now, they can just dump it into a donor advised fund and decide later. And so, but that can get really technical. And so again, that's a why. Why are we even doing a CLT, or why am I even doing a donor advised fund? And it's more of the story behind the why, because they think it's because we tip over into this how too easily if we're focusing again on that why. So we're trying to save taxes. Well, what's the real why? What's the heart why? And that goes back to who, I think. Right?
Yeah. Well, Dr. James says it's 3. It's the who is part of it. He says it's their history. So how their life story entwines with the cause, their values, and their people, meaning the community or an inspirational figure. So sometimes it can be the who, but sometimes it's the values, and it's just plain the story. Like, well, I went to college there. Well, then there's then there's a community, there's a sense of belonging. But what you're getting at, or I think it was you, Laura, and it is really the big challenge for nonprofits. I mean, if you really want to break it all down, y'all are your operations are running 2 train tracks at the same time. There's the transactional train track and there's the relational train track. The problem is that once you get someone on a transactional train track, which is usually a low dollar way to go with very low retention, while the relational train track is usually high dollar and assets and has a double or triple the retention rate, according to our data with my app, that the fundraising report card, if y'all are familiar. So you think of that, you're running 2 train tracks, and which one has the tail that wags the dog? Anyone? It's the transactional one, right? The transactional train track runs the show, and then like the relational train track is second fiddle, yet most of the money comes from the relational train track. Here's the rub. It's very hard. Once you get someone on the transactional train track, it's very hard to get them to see your cause, which they think about as a family member, by the way, because that's the part of the brain that lights up when they think about your cause, is the part of the brain that thinks about love and family and belonging and things like that. So, but if you begin the relationship transactionally, and this is where the fundraising pyramid comes in, I've always said it's BS. I mean, people do not need to give $10 first, and then we work them up to $1 million. That happens, especially if you look at your data, because that's the way it's been designed. But the truth of the matter is that it's very hard to help people jump train tracks. It's very hard. So they're doing it on their own. In fact, without your prompting, they're moving to a different train track. It's just that they're putting their money in the DAF. Right? So it's our job to sort of interrupt that, which we recommend you do with a survey, to get the data, find out that they have the DAF, and because that's their bridge to get into, and they're hoping, and they desperately want to have that deeper relationship with some cause, and it could be 3 to 5 or 7 causes. And so now that we have that data, now we can use it to invite them to go over onto the other train track. And that means either giving this way or at least showing interest in it and talking to you. I think it was Steve earlier on that said about an endowment, like, here's a valuable offer. And is the timing good for you to talk about this? Would you consider it now or maybe later? Yeah. So I just went off on a rant and we only have like a little bit of time left. We might finish early, but can I get some head nods that this makes sense or doesn't make sense?
Makes sense.
Makes sense. Thank you. Well, then, I mean, I'm open to hearing any other questions or feedback on what you just saw, what we just talked about, maybe even some whining and crying about the fact that the data can be challenging with your administrators and administration operations. Anybody have any other thoughts they'd like to share? I see Charlie's just laughing at me.
There's too many stories.
Oh, that's yeah. Okay.
And some are good. But, you know, just reminding people even recently for we had a gala event last weekend, and I sent out some reminders to people we were hoping would be sponsors, and they never responded to me, but the money came in. So it can work in kind of, you know, discreet ways.
Yeah. Yeah. People need gentle nudges. These, you know, these people are very busy. People are busy. And this is not their top priority. So we kind of need to gently interrupt the busyness of their lives to remind them that this is important. Giving provides tremendous value to these people. They feel good. They feel like they're making a difference and they're finding meaning in their life, or they're teaching their family about something. It's powerful, but they need to be reminded. And if you don't have the right list, then you end up overspraying and reminding people that don't need to be reminded or really can't even do anything with that information. And that's a bad thing. You don't want to spray and pray a daft giving email. That's going to get people upset and they'll unsubscribe. So you got to be highly targeted with these highly specific kinds of giving tools, if you will. All right. Any other last thoughts before we wrap up?
I would just say, I think the challenge is always that the relational and the transactional train tracks, really, it's two different trains and they're going to collide with each other. That's really the challenge. You can be in a situation where there's a lot of pressure to get the dollars in. And so I can think of organizations I worked at where there was this big push, and yes, we did get a nice gift from a particular donor, but we probably could have got 5 times that if there hadn't been the pressure to get that gift in that fiscal year. And after that donor did that gift, they also viewed that as their significant, their significant gift. So it was kind of a crash and burn approach, I would say. So the short-term benefit was good, but the long-term loss was far greater. So
The tortoise.
I'm sure everybody, I'm sure, has that, you know, you can be in that situation. So
yeah, and I'll bring attention to, in Dr. James's training in the e-course, he talks about the power of the pause. And look, if any of you have recently been sold, you know, by Market Smart, and you did a, has anybody, show of hands or whatever, not done a opportunity analysis? Anybody? No, nobody's done an opportunity analysis, really? Oh, all right. Well, maybe you're all long-term customers, or you're not customers at all. But what we do is we don't in our first and second or third meeting, we don't try to sell our system to people. We say, all we'd like you to do is allow us to do an opportunity analysis so that we can determine what kind of ROI we think you're going to get, because we guarantee 10-to-1 ROI. So we pause the process and we do some expert kind of work. What Dr. James says is, in his training, is he says that fundraisers who don't get over their skis or are not pressured to close a gift now, if you pause first meet.
You're a frozen pause, Greg.
That West Virginia Wi-Fi.
I don't think that was for dramatic effect. I
It
really
was
don't.
bad timing.
Yeah, this is where we all wait a little bit awkwardly to see if he comes back or if he drops.
Yep.
There it is.
He's gonna come back.
Yeah.
He was sharing some golden nuggets. You just know it.
That's when it always happens.
Always.
Even when I'm on calls with other people, it's like right when there's something very pertinent to take note of. Also, Laura, hi, by the way. It's been a little while since you and I have caught up, but it's great to see you. Oh, you're muted. That's okay. I do that all the time too.
Yes, it's good to see you. Yeah, and I'm, well, after today, I'm going to go back and look on my dashboard after we get off this call, because I'm sure, I'm sure I've not been looking at those replies. Yeah.
And that's totally notable. As you're saying that, I'm like popping in there right now because I am certain that you have lots of folks. And I think I actually wrote down, I'm supposed to chat with Ann and Peter a little bit later this month. And I would really love to just kind of share some of the insight about how much more opportunity there actually is based on answers like this, because it's not just donor advised fund. And I love where your head's at, and it's because you're good at your job, but
well, you can call me anytime, Jen.
I
Okay?
will. I
right.
will, but even thinking about, these data is so important, obviously, right? And so for those of you who aren't familiar, in Laura's case with the Salvation Army, we've been working for a few years now to cultivate the right data from donors. And so we're asking folks about any kind of non-cash assets, which includes donor advised funds. And I was just getting ready to say, Laura, I love where your head's at, because even though this might be really beneficial for your mid-level and major gift teams, there are certainly planned gift opportunities within that, right?
Oh,
so yeah, definitely check out your dashboard. There's a wealth in there.
Yes.
Well, I did hear from Greg. Unfortunately, he got not knocked out, but like knocked off the internet. Nobody came and conked him on the head or anything. And he just apologizes. He's just not sure how long it'll take. And he says, thank you. And please take the survey at the end. And we really appreciate all of you. So if you have any questions, please give us a holler, or any more comments, please let us know, or anything, and we will see you next month.
Okay, thanks,
All right.
everyone.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.